the best part, I mean, I'm trying to elevate, like, the colored man, how much is used by him. If he's from the poor part, Europe, right, which is maybe spring, more climate, right? 3 months, huh?
I said that would be considered the worst part, not necessarily the poor part. This would be
worst part.
This would be the worst. This would be the poor part.
Yes, yes. So it's winter. Maybe he gets spring 3 months out of a whole year. How much is used by the color? What does that mean? Is it? Then you know what I'm saying. Then in slam, we're talking about you living off the land and like you know what I'm saying. Like I'm trying to draw that up. You know what I'm saying?
The way I see that degree, the useful land concept, right? There's a lot of parts of the degree where, you know, you can make your answers to it, but understand that they are to be figured. They're not to be answered immediately, you know? The useful land, though, you also have to think, what did Elijah mean by useful, right? So that comes into play as well, you know? Also, too, this concept of how much is the whole thing, right? So how much useful land is there in total?
196,940,000.
No. Useful land. Useful land.
Oh, wow.
Look at you. You had the 23 and 6. What do you get? You get the 29. But out of all the land mass, just land, how much land is there, right? It says it, 120, 57, 255, right? So loose change, right? That's a little over half, right? It's about half. So what they're saying though is that like half the land mass is useful, right? If we're doing a degree technical now. Now we're not doing it based on this metaphors. Like this is we use the black woman's body, but they have the mind. You know what I'm saying? Like we have the 23, they have the 6. So we have our body, but we don't have our mind. Like all that kind of stuff, though. You know, but when we talk about the land, he's also saying that if it was technical, about half of this land mass is useful, right? And how much of it are we using, right? How much of it is natural resource, how much is using? And again, these become difficult because whatever we consider poor can also become part of the best. And whatever we saw as the worst part can actually fluctuate and be just poor, or it can get better as we go along. Because that's the way like actual Earth is. The Earth fluctuates, you know what I mean? Crops, when you even have good farms, you rotate them. You don't just leave them on the same. So it's how we speak of these things. Obviously, if we go with the consistent metaphorizing of land in the degrees, we're talking about the nature of the experience that we're having on these lands. So the best part is going to be where everything started, where everything was right and exact, or like, you know, the way Elijah's picturing it. And there's a little bit of fantastical mythology in the way the lessons are brought, or at least the way that they're pitched, because Elijah was an evangelist of truth. I always teach that he's an evangelist of truth. He was evangelizing the shit because when he said something that was true, and he said, hey, why is that true? He said, listen, it's true, and if you don't bear witness to it, you'll be killed by Far Muhammad. When he comes back, they'll throw a lightning bolt at you, blah, blah, blah. Wow. He didn't go, look up fact and figures in here. He said, look it up. When he said look it up, he said, prove it to me, and I'll give you $1,000. You know, like he had these challenges. He's an evangelist. He wasn't giving you the answer. You know what I mean? He was telling you, like, yo, it is what it is, and, you know, we burn in hellfire.
Take it or leave it.
Far's returning when Far returns, or else, you know? So it doesn't mean that what he's saying wasn't true. Obviously, we're looking at these degrees and we find truth in them all the time. And again, in new ways all the time. But in this idea of useful land, though, the way I think of it simply, though, right, is the percentages, if it will. Well, I'm not going to tell it to you now, but how much of the percentage is 23 out of 29? 6 out of 29. You see what I'm saying? If you do those percentages, though, you get interesting numbers too. So the percentages, they also tell you kind of stories in the math as well. You know what I mean? But they all deal with one thing. If you wanted one basic understanding of useful land, is this, right? When we talk about useful land, though, we're looking at something and half of it is no good, of the whole landmass. So we're looking at something specific, though, and everybody is focused on one part, right? One side of the world, one reality of the world, one part of it is right. useful. You see? The thing is though, is that we're God. So if
what
he said,
causes rain, hail, snow,
if
and
he said,
earthquakes?
but look, if he said that about half of it was useful, that's what he said. That doesn't have to be what we said. You see what I'm saying? So when we look at these degrees, I try to think like, what did Elijah see as useful? Because he applied these percentages of useful and for them and for us when he was trying to divide America up and say, let us take this as a colony, right? Because that's what they were trying to do when he was alive.
Yes,
You know
sir.
what I mean? And I think that all of that played into the mentality of what he was trying to do there.
Right.
You know? For us though, I just think like, yo, you should be thinking like, yo, what is the term useful to you? Because if I had a barren field that couldn't produce any crops, so it still would be useful for me because I could do kung fu on it, you know, it'd be a flat land, I could train in it, I could do all types of stuff.
Yeah.
But to another person, say, this is horrible farmland, like it's just broken, destroyed, it's dry, right? So a lot of it has to do with your perspective, and when you start looking at 120, you have to start looking at like, these are subjective as well. They demand that you analyze these degrees and not just come with the most basic, best understanding that has been passed down to you. You can also challenge them and come up with counters. You can also, look, you could agree with the older God's build on it, but also see something else in it too, because it's gonna grow and develop and see something different. Because the degrees were written and they were spoken at a certain time in history. So we have to first look at them and say, like any other text, any text, we say, what were these people living like when they said this text and when they printed this text?
Yeah.
And what was the reality then when this text was made? That helps you a lot, for example, when you look at words like Asiatic and things like that. Because these are words that that were more common in language back then, but not as common now. You know, people don't say stuff like that. And you don't call Asian people Asiatic. Like, hey, Asiatics, you know what I mean? Like, you don't do that. A lot of them would probably be offended though. And most Asians, like particular, they don't always want to be lumped in with every other Asian. You know what I mean? Especially if you're gonna call them Oriental or Asiatics and stuff. You know what I mean? And go there. You know. But no, people usually don't make that mistake. You know? Europeans make it on purpose.
If Mecca did this.